Hello, and welcome to the Boffin Buzz, the podcast for anyone fascinated by farming's future. Hello again, and welcome to the Boffin Buzz, and welcome back to Adam, who's our farmer from Herefordshire, and is joining us for part two of this podcast. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, everyone.
And so just a quick reminder again for Basis members that you can claim CPD points for listening to the Boffin Buzz. So keep listening for the details on how to claim your point. We will give you part two of how to claim your 1 point, your one CPD point for listening to the Boffin Buzz. But yes, so as I say, we're welcoming back Adam, and those who heard episode one heard Adam's journey, the regen journey that Adam's been on, and I think you're underplaying your strengths, actually, Adam. So Adam farms in Herefordshire. He's an arable farmer there in Herefordshire. I think it's about 650 acres that you farm, Adam. So just very briefly, tell us a little bit about the farm there.
Yes, so as you said, Tom, I farm in partnership with my wife Jane in North Herefordshire. And as I was saying to you earlier, Tom, really, it's accidental arable farmers coming from a livestock farming background, very soil focused, without sort of introducing livestock into the system, and almost really considering what's below ground as my above ground livestock. It's our sort of ambition really to look after what's below ground, as in earthworms, beetles, bacteria, protozoa, that sort of thing, as much as we possibly can, and trying to get a plant benefit from doing so.
Yeah. Now, of course, one of the challenges that you face that we've discussed in the past, Adam, is slugs. And
Yes.
so you've joined our slug project, and you are one of our slug sleuths who are doing on-farm trials with us. So just for those people who are not familiar with the project, Slimers, that's strategies leading to improved management and enhanced resilience against slugs. It's a 2.6 million farmer-led research program led by Boffin, and we've got 6 project partners, including Harper Adams University, which is just down the road from you, I think, aren't they, Adam?
Pretty
and
much
also
so, yeah.
John Innes Centre over in Norwich and the UK Agritech Centre. We've also got Aggravation and Photonics and FarmScan Ag, who are partners in the project. So it's a small R&D partnership project, part of the DEFRA's Farming Innovation Program, and it's DEFRA funded and delivered by Innovate UK. So as part of that, it is very much a farmer-led project, and the farmers at the centre of that are our 30 slug sleuths. So that's 20 farmers and 10 Hutchinson's agronomists who are monitoring slug activity throughout the 3 years of the trial. And what we're really looking to find out is this thing that slugs apparently gather in patches. So this is work that Keith Walters at Harper Adams University has been doing for, I think several decades, looking at slug behavior. And he has got that. There's some really sort of quite good research on this now, that they do gather in patches. And you can tell from the soil qualities, from the soil textural qualities, where they're going to gather. So that's what we're looking at within this project. So, Adam, I think that we've scanned your soils, haven't we? Is that right?
Actually, you've not scanned them yet because
we
it's been
haven't
too
scanned
wet.
them yet.
They are going to be scanned apparently. So we skipped the scanning process to save the blushes of getting stuck. So that's still to be done. But anyway, I've started on obviously the monitoring of the slugs and the slug pressure and all that sort of stuff. So the work is underway.
Yeah, no, actually, I have to say, there are 1 or 2 farms actually where we haven't managed to get the scanning done. I mean, the weather has just been a real challenge this autumn, I guess, hasn't it? I mean, so but your trial has been established. So
Yes.
Like all of the plots, this is a protocol that's been set up by Keith. So there's a hectare area of your wheat crop where we've placed out 100 traps, so each trap about 10 meters apart. It's a grid, a square grid that you've been monitoring. And the idea is that we want to identify in that hectare grid any patches that develop. It was Clive who came along and set out the traps, I think, for you,
It
Adam.
was indeed, yeah. Yeah.
Just tell me about the field that it's in. Is it a field that you have a big history of slugs in?
I hate to say, but the whole farm has a big history of slugs. So, trying to identify one particular patch is yes. Well, it was a field after all sea rape, and we always know that slugs tend to hit fields harder after all sea rape,
Hmm.
especially if it's had chopped all sea rape straw on it. So it was a field after all sea rape, and yeah, it is. It's the soil type changes quite quickly across it. So I thought, well, it might work well in the fact that we've got one area within the hectare block really that's a little more gravelier than the another area at the far end really that is a little bit more sort of Bromyard series silk clay loam.
Right. I see. Just now within your hectare grid, as well as the 100 traps. So when I talk about traps, they're basically 19 centimeter diameter plastic plant pot sources, aren't they?
That's
So
right.
and each week you go through and you monitor the slug numbers within that. And you've also got 20 quadrats within the area. I think it's either 20 or 25 quadrats that you're monitoring. And the idea of those quadrats is so that we can get an idea of what the crop growth is like. So as well as the crop growth in terms of its emergence and what growth stage it's at, but also whether there's any signs of damage, and particularly sort of patchy damage over the area. So just tell me, I mean, so how long does it take you to do the monitoring each week, Adam?
The first time I did the monitoring, obviously as a bit of a novice, I hadn't done it before. I think that took me an hour to do
Right.
that, and really now I've shaved probably 20 minutes off it. So
I see.
yeah, it takes about 40 minutes or thereabouts, really. Yeah. So it's a process of going through the traps, having a look underneath the saucer, as it were, seeing what slugs you've got, take a note of what number of slugs there is underneath
Hmm.
that saucer, and then as you then come to a little square that Keith has marked out really, which is probably about 18 centimeters by 18 centimeters, taking a picture of that as a reference.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters.
Is it? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is it's a quarter of a meter, and then you times it by 4, and you get your plant population for
There you
the
go.
area
Yes.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
idea. But yeah. So the are you finding anything? I mean, it's really the grey field slug that we're after. So are you? What's been your experience? Are you finding slugs under your traps?
Yes, I would say to start with, the majority of the traps had slugs underneath them, ranging from anywhere from one to sort of five slugs in places.
Right.
Strangely enough, maybe there's a reason for it. I'm not really quite sure. The numbers do seem to be dropping off a little bit. Maybe that's because of the cooler weather, but
Yeah.
the slugs are still there, but they don't seem to be affecting the crop too much. And I noticed last time, really, even with the amount of slugs that we've still got there'll still be one or two sort of underneath. I would say 50% of the traps will have a slug underneath, whether it's one, two, or three. They don't seem to be attacking the crop as they were.
Right.
Whether that has anything actually to do with the crop getting more, sort of vigorous and resilient and settling in, or whether it's maybe the appetite of the slug is dropping off. I don't know quite how it works, or whether it could even be a, sort of slight varietal thing. I'm not quite sure.
What sort of variety have you got?
It's a variety called Typhoon.
Aha. Well, we did do some work on. So in parallel with this, Adam, we've been doing some feeding trials at John Owens Centre, and we did some work a while ago looking at different varieties and some of the varieties. This was at the request of the farmers of the slug sleuths at the time, and they identified a few varieties that they were keen to have tested. And actually, we got some interesting results. So the varieties do actually vary.
Oh,
There are some varieties that are quite susceptible to slugs. X days is quite an interesting one because it does get so the slugs. the most damage that they do is the embryo itself. They seem to
Yeah.
hone in on the embryo, on the wheat embryo. That's the bit that they like to eat. And they do that with X days is an interesting one, because although they eat it and they like it, it can grow back from a very small amount of embryo. It seems to be quite resilient in that respect. Graham and Gleam were two other varieties that were relatively unscathed compared to the other ones, that they actually managed to pull away from the damage. They didn't suffer quite as much damage.
Hmm.
Which is interesting. But none of them were as good as we've got this one variety, Watkins 788, that we've been trying, which this is an old landrace variety. John in the
Right.
Centre
Yes.
has been doing some work looking at these old varieties, this collection called the Watkins collection, and trying to identify lines that have got some sort of slug resistance in it. I say slug resistance in inverted commas. And this
Mm.
one line, Watkins 788, seems to have some really interesting properties. And we're putting those through trials at the moment. I'm keen to get you involved in those trials, Adam.
Ah.
I know we've talked about them in the past,
There's
but
a
perhaps
trap for me as well.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, no. So now one of the you've got the Husk app to make recordings of the. So this is an app
Gab.
that it was developed by a Cotswold farmer actually. To do the recording on his farm, and we're using it as part of the trial to record the things. I mean, the great thing about that, by the way, Adam, is that when you enter the things in, then it goes straight back to us. Sky can pick up the details, and so we don't have to pester you for the records. But how are you getting on with that app? Is that working for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a technophobe anyway, to be honest with you, Tom, but I did have a bit of a go with it. And
Right.
then I'm fairly sure I uploaded some stuff, and then it disappeared, and then Sky suggested that I reload it again, so I reloaded it again. And the long and short of it is I haven't particularly got on that well with the Husk app. So you
Yeah.
guys are very, very well, kindly sort of sent out a little notebook that you can very easily put everything in,
The handbook.
the
Yeah.
handbook. So everything's gone in the handbook. Everything's been photographed as it should be, as it would have been in the Husk app. So at some point, yes, I shall be sending those across to Sky to decipher, I suppose.
I recognise there have been challenges with the app, especially for those people, who can't pick up the signal in the field, for example. There have been issues with it, but
It's all
hopefully,
very straightforward and very easy. But
yeah.
and I thought, well, I may as well just put it straight down in the handbook, and at least then, if it needs to be deciphered, it can be. But if it's going into the app and there's issues and problems, yeah, there's nothing but frustration. So yeah, I thought I'd just take route one and go straight to the handbook.
Yeah, I see. So now you said that there was some damage, it looked as though there was some activity early on in the crop. Do you think you've suffered much damage? I mean, not just in that hectare grid, but across the whole field.
I There has been damage. I have slug pelleted it twice,
Right.
which, to be perfectly honest with you, after all sea rape, I would say is very light, and I've got away, very easy really on the slug pelleting. For what reason that is, I don't know. It wasn't rolled because it was too wet, so hence I was a little bit nervous that it was going to actually get more damage
Mm,
than it. The seed rate was relatively high at 185 for the time of the year, and there are slugs there, so I know there's a fair predominance of slugs throughout the field, but the crop seems to be growing away, seems to be healthy, and it's very little slug damage on it, surprisingly enough. So
mm,
yeah, it's been quite an interesting exercise. Possibly I should have run a little trial myself, putting some slug traps out, which I have done. I put slug traps out in other fields, but putting some little dishes out to actually see what that picks up. I usually just put a paper bag down on the floor and just lift it up and
right.
see what slug numbers are under there. Very casual, nothing scientific in it by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I would say I've come across. It's been very, very easy, really. Slug pressure
Mm.
this year on that particular field. There has been other fields that has been more slug pressure for some reason.
Well, I mean, the what we're hoping from the data that we're gathering from the trials is that we will identify. Well, we know that that slugs do gather in patches, and we also know what it is about the soil qualities that will do that. But the whole point of the trials is to get a much clearer idea of that, so that we can, with confidence, turn the pelleter on and off through the field, and perhaps have it driven by a precision map in the future. That's the idea. That's the service that we're heading towards. But obviously,
Mm.
in order to do that, that's quite a brave thing to do, to just supply in patches. I mean, is that something that you would consider doing, Adam? Turning your
Uh,
pellet on and off through the field.
mm. Well, after all seed rape, nearly always pre-bait before drilling, so the whole field gets a dressing of pellets because we all know the pressure is going to be high after oilseed rape, and then over the years you do actually get a little bit of an idea really of where historically there's been extra slug pressure. The heavier, wetter, damper areas of the fields predominantly end up with the heavier slug pressure. So my standard treatment after oilseed rape really would be first application, blanket treat, and then treat as necessary, as in turning the pelleter on and off
Right.
as I'm going across the field, or even I will, slow down or go faster to adjust the application rate.
Well, hopefully, we'll be developing the software that will do it automatically if you've got the right sort of equipment. That's the whole idea of the project. But
Yeah.
now another element of the project, and I don't know how much you know about this, Adam, is the autonomous robots that we're planning to introduce. And hoping that you might want to be involved in this area of it. So we are also working with, as I say, Photonics and FarmScan Ag, who have been developing with UK Agritech Centre the ability to actually spot a slug in the field and then treat it. So, and the idea is that rather than treating it with pellets, treat the slug with nematodes that eat away the slug. Now, if you were to treat your whole field or even just patches with these nematodes, it would be prohibitively expensive. So the
Yes.
idea is that we're developing robots that will know where to go in the field. They'll go to these patches within your field, and then they'll have a hunt around in those patches, find slugs, and then apply them with these nematodes. So we're just developing that technology as part of the project, and we're hoping that there's going to be some trials in the new year where the first element of that is we need to capture loads and loads and loads of photographs of slugs in the crop. And
Oh.
we're hoping for your
Mm.
help in that, Adam. So is that something that you think you'd be able to help us with?
I think I'd probably be able to help you with that, and even more so, I think my wife would be very keen to help you on that because it's one thing that she does always grumble about. She's a very keen gardener. She's always grumbling about the numbers of slugs that she has in her garden. It's a bit
Right.
like, oh right, okay, we'll see what we can do. So, strangely enough, she has been listening to some podcasts regarding slug nematodes. So
Ah,
yeah, so she's almost one step ahead of me on that one.
right. Oh well, that's another. I mean, area where you and her can get involved actually in
Mm.
terms of sending in slugs for our trials. So we actually need thousands of slugs to do these
Right.
breeding trials because they've going back to this Watkins 788. They've now crossed it with Paragon, which is a more modern wheat. There are 84 recombinant inbred lines that they've got. Some of these we are trialing within field trials. We've got two. We've got line 64 and line 50 that we're trialing in field trials this autumn. We've got six of us who are taking it through the trials. But as I say, there are 84 of these, and they need all 84, and they need the data from that in order to actually find the genetic, the areas in the genome, in the wheat genome, that could be
Right. Yeah.
giving this slug resistant quality. It's the QTLs, or the quantitative trait loci, that they're looking for. This is beyond my understanding, Adam, but the clever scientists at John Innes Centre are literally that they're sifting through the genome as we speak, and hopefully finding the genetics that's going to help us get over slugs in the
Interesting.
future. So that's another area. But as I say, we need slugs for that, and we are asking, particularly farmers, to get involved and gardeners as well, to send in your slugs. And it's particularly the grey field slugs we're looking for. We're not really interested in the large Spanish slugs, or
Yes,
the
yeah.
leopard slug. Actually, is which is the one that you often find in gardens, which is massive, but it's a slug predator. So don't send that in, because it'll eat all the other slugs and there'll be just a gooey
Oh,
mess
didn't know that. There we
by
go.
the time it arrives at
Yeah.
John Innes Centre. But we can send you out a pack. And that's what I'd say. If you want to get involved in that, please go to the Boffin website, boffin.org.uk. Have a look for our citizen science area on the website, and sign up to be a slug scout. We've actually got about 3,000 people who have done so. Now, we haven't sent them all a pack, I hasten to add. But anyone who wants to be involved, there's more information on the website about that. But I mean, do you think this? Because, as I say, this is the monitoring that you're doing, Adam, is just a small part of the project as a whole. And there is payment for this, but then there'd be payment for other bits that you wanted to do as well. Is that, would you like to get more involved in the project?
I think so, Tom. I wouldn't like to make a commitment just
Yeah,
yet until we get to the end, really, of where we are. The current scheme that I'm involved in. I'd be happy to have a chat with you about what's involved.
yeah,
I wouldn't like to overcommit regarding my time involvement, and then let you guys down, as it were. I don't employ any staff, and it's sometimes time management can be a little issue.
sure.
So yeah, we'll see how that develops. But yeah, judging by where I am at the moment with you guys and how involved I've sort of become, I don't see why I shouldn't want to take it up.
And the other element is, what sort of things would you like to look at? So, I mean, one thing that we haven't discussed is beetles, because I know that you're very interested in beetles.
Mm.
So, is this an area of the project that because this is a farmer-led project, Adam, and it's very much up to the farmers within it as to where we take it. So, is there anything in particular that you'd like to look at within the project?
Something that's sort of did occur to me some time ago, really, is the broad use of insecticides.
Mm,
More particularly, really, in the autumn. You sort of used on a just in case basis. And I think really whether there ought to be a little bit more focus on, is it necessary to be spraying BYDV insecticides? Is it not? How do we
mm,
identify really whether a peach cherry aphid or whatever it is carrying BYDV, and whether the risks involved in not applying an insecticide against BYDV, because we all know what BYDV does and the implications of getting it. And you do feel as though in the autumn, or I feel as though in the autumn, I'm sort of spinning the roulette wheel on BYDV when I decide to not put an insecticide on. But
Yeah,
I've
because
certainly,
you're insecticide free. I think is that right?
mm,
And have been for how many years?
certainly since, well, Deter was the last sort of broad spectrum sort of
Mm.
insecticide I used, really, as a seed treatment. Now I don't use any seed treatments at all on my seed, so that's I've certainly seen the benefit from that.
And
But
no
I was
BYDV
actually
sprays.
no BYDV sprays, no. And then even before Deter ban, I was not actually putting a foliar insecticide on.
Yeah.
So
And,
I
and
would
what
say
about,
that
have you noticed the difference at all
I
on the
think so.
farm?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have. I've noticed a difference, and if I'm perfectly honest with you, I feel better for not putting insecticide on, because,
Mm.
okay, we all know we want to try and target the bird cherry aphid for BYDV, but everything else really is getting knocked out as well. Whether there is a natural selection of insects really that are tolerant to the insecticide spray that we put on, and whether those were beneficials or not. But I think you're killing the good, the bad, and the ugly, really. With a broad
Mm.
spectrum insecticide, and I think whether there should be a little bit more work conducted regarding broad spectrum insecticides.
Well,
I'd,
we could do some work on that within Slimers, and in fact, we have last year we did actually do some beetle monitoring within the project. We worked with Kelly Jowett at Rothamsted, who's developed a very good protocol actually for doing pitfall traps. It
Oh,
didn't work
yes.
out particularly well, unfortunately, because the weather turned against us and the traps all got flooded out,
Right,
which was
yeah.
not great. So I'm not sure we've actually got some useful data from that first year, but perhaps that's something. I mean, is that something perhaps that you might be interested in looking at? Doing some
I think so,
useful monitoring.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got very close, half a mile away. I don't know quite whether he'd be internationally recognised, but sort of nationally. I've got an entomologist, and he's
Ah,
started during, I think it was lockdown. He started monitoring the insect activity and the water courses on the farm, and I think he was very encouraged really with the health of our water courses and the amount of insect activity sort of in and around the farm. And he's very passionate about what he does, and he always
mm.
reports back to me. Do I realise I've got this on the farm and that on the farm? And I haven't got a clue, if I'm perfectly honest with you, as you wander around your daily jobs, really what you've got and what you haven't got. But he seems to know it, and yeah, it's very encouraging, really, to think that. Yeah, I suppose you're almost a little island within the rest of the community, farmers, whether they're using insecticides or not. But hopefully we're trying to look after what we've got, and you know, build on that success. We're really, I suppose.
Well, do encourage them to join Boffin as a citizen scientist. We're very keen to get those people involved, and also do. Have you come across the Slug Circle? Have you started
Yeah,
using the Slug Circle?
yes, I know about
So
the
this
slug
is an
circle.
area on the farming forum where we're getting the discussion going. There's some really good discussion on there. Oh, I mean, one thing that because I know that you've had problems with your slug traps blowing away, Adam. Yeah, just tell us about that.
Um, it does come with, I suppose, when you're at 220 meters, and the site is a little exposed, and we're about the only thing between us and South Wales, and it does funnel up through the valley. And unfortunately, we've lost several of our slug traps, but we managed to retrieve them from several hedges and
Oh,
neighbours and stuff.
fantastic.
So they are back in place. And there is a bit of stone and stuff in the field that it's the slug traps are. So now they've got a big weighty stone on top of them, which works fine. They don't move much after that.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, just give you a bit of history there, by the way. So last year, well, when we set out all the traps, we put a stone on every one. But there are some fields that just don't have stones, and poor old Clive, who's setting out the traps, it was sometimes quite an effort to find stones. He now says that he can't walk through a field and not when he spots a stone, he can't just leave it there. Now it's kind of like a reaction because he's done it so many times. So what we developed was an idea where we'd put skewers in, and we did actually do some trials on the skewers. So I set out, this is here on my farm, I set out some traps with skewers and did a trial in 70-mile-an-hour winds, and the skewers held. What we didn't realize, of course, the ground I put it into was pretty firm ground. And so if you've cultivated the soil, or if you just recently drilled it, the skewers don't hold quite as well as we thought. And that was the problem. That was the issue.
Ah,
You'll see
yes.
on the Slug Circle, we've got a series of videos showing us, showing, that we've done. So this time we did some more trials in a cultivated field with a leaf blower. And just put them to the absolute test, and sure enough, they failed. The ones with the skewers. So
Yeah.
we've now got if you put two skewers in a sort of X shape, then it holds it down, or you can just, as you say, put a stone on.
The
So
only trouble with
hopefully,
the only trouble with the skewers is the fact that when you do have a peep underneath to see how many slugs, they're a bit of a devil to get back on. So
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
I've settled for a rock.
Oh, right. Yeah. No. Okay. No. Well, listen, Adam. That's just about all we've got time for. But I hope you'll join us again at some future episode
Of course,
of the
Tom.
Bop and Buzz, and perhaps give us an update. When we've got some. We're just in terms of the results from the trials. We're just currently going through year one results. Haven't got those results published yet, though we have got some really interesting information about how slugs behave in wet weather. I mean, that was the unique thing about last year, that we
Oh,
could actually do some good data on that. So there's some really interesting work that Keith Walters and their team have done and just published, and so we're putting the results of that onto the Slug Circle, and so do keep your eye on the Slug Circle for information
great.
on that. And that's the first place where all the information about the trial will be appearing, and also all of the feedback from you and all the other guys as well on the trial. So. And I'd say that to, all of the listeners, please do go onto the Slug Circle, have a look at what's going on. There is some really good conversation. If you've got slugs and you're looking for some answers, go onto the Slug Circle, ask a question, and we'll come back to you with an answer. It may not be the answer you want to hear, but it'll be an answer. Anyway,
Yes.
listen, Adam, thank you so much for
No
joining
worries,
us
Tom.
on the Boffin Buzz. And just to
Mm,
remind basis members that you can claim one CPD point after listening to both episodes of our podcast with Adam. So if you haven't already listened to the first episode, listen to it. And at the end of it, you'll get the first part of the code. And then join it together with the second half of the code, which should be either coming up on your screen, or we'll insert it at this point in the podcast. But thank you very much to Adam. And thank you very much to all of you for joining us for the Boffin Buzz. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.